Τον Οκτώβριο του 2015 το διαδίκτυο πλημμύρισε με την ατάκα Warmer Together και ασπρόμαυρες φωτογραφίες δύο θρύλων του παγκόσμιου κινηματογράφου, του Ρόμπερτ Ντε Νίρο και του Αλ Πατσίνο. Δεν ήταν όμως οι μόνοι αναγνωρίσιμοι τύποι στην τελευταία καμπάνια της Moncler. Αναγνωρίσιμο ήταν και το στυλ των φωτογραφιών και των βίντεο. Οι μίστες δεν χρειάστηκαν παραπάνω από κάποια λεπτά της ώρας για να συμπεράνουν πως πίσω από το μνημειώδες καλλιτεχνικό αποτέλεσμα βρίσκεται ο Πλάτων, ο κορυφαίος φωτογράφος πορτρέτων παγκοσμίως. Το κορυφαίος φωτογράφος πορτρέτων δεν είναι αυθαίρετο, θα το δικαιολογήσουμε παραπάνω, όπως και το κάτι παραπάνω από κορυφαίος φωτογράφος πορτρέτων. Πρώτα, ας του ζητήσουμε να μοιραστεί με τους αναγνώστες του ΚΛΙΚ την εμπειρία να σκηνοθετεί τον Ρόμπερτ Ντε Νίρο και τον Αλ Πατσίνο.
Hello, congratulations on your work for Moncler. Like many of your projects, it will be remembered for years to come. I want to know when Moncler first approached you about creating the 5 short films with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. What was the very first thing that ran through your mind? Was it excitement, pressure, a mix of everything?
Well, the most important thing for me is always to celebrate real human connection between people. That's the theme in all my work, to try and find something that is authentic and something you believe and something that moves you because of someone's humanity. Now, sometimes I photograph people who have done terrible things in history. I photographed a lot of dictators too. So I'm not always promoting people, but I am trying to show the people who shape our time in history. And when I was approached for the Moncler project, the Moncler is the most incredible organization. They're visionaries, and they think way beyond clothes. They think about big ideas like, what is a dream? How do we reach for something that unites people? All their projects have something bigger than the clothes in them. So when they approached me, my first thought was, well, the most important thing here is not just the fact that these are two legendary icons, but actually I have to capture a magical quality between them and to celebrate their friendship. And we always thought of them as Hollywood rivals, but it turns out they've been friends for a long time. And they originally met at acting class before they were famous in New York. And they were both poor. Bob was just beginning to get small roles in films before Scorsese. And Al was beginning to do theatre. And this is in 1968, so it's the year I was born. Oh. So there's this sort of cycle of story here. And they met in an acting class because they both arrived early and there was no one there. So it was an empty room with chairs and tables. It was cold.
Just like your setting.
That's why I did the set, because I was paying tribute to the acting class when they first met. So what we did was I recreated the environment when they first met as young men, looking forward to hopefully a successful career in life. And now they meet again in the same room as the two elder statesmen. Now they made it to the top. They are regarded as perhaps the two greatest actors of our time.
Amazing.
And so it was a tribute to that magical moment when they first met. And they said, hey man, how you doing? What's going on? I'm acting, you're acting, let's talk. And they became really good friends way back then. And they told me this when I was working with them. So that was the inspiration. And they told me that throughout their years, as they both became very famous and successful, because they had known each other before, then their friendship was not corrupted by fame and power and success. It was real. And they knew each other when they were both broke. They knew each other when both not successful. So their friendship was built on something that was real, not on celebrity. And that's why they maintained their friendship, I think, over a long period of time, because the world of fame and power is so crazy and it twists and distorts everybody. And, you know, when you're in it, when you're in that madness, you need real friends that you can turn to for real advice, for real guidance, real counseling in the highs and lows of a life. And often you go to someone who has nothing to do with this celebrity. They turned to each other through the years because they knew each other before, and they both understood what each of them are going through, what each other, what they're both experiencing. Al knows what Bob experiences, and Bob knows what Al does because they're both the Godfather. They both know. So it was a magical tribute to real human connection and trust and friendship. And in the time of AI, I think these are the things that will become the most valuable. It's the most valuable currency in our society. In the next 10 years, it will be real human connection. And my role with the whole project was not just to take cool pictures of these big celebrities, but to actually photograph the friendship, the kindness, the tenderness. And another thing that was important is that, particularly for men, it was a message to masculinity today, that there's something lovely about these guys who you think of them as kind of macho guys. They're tough. They've played some really tough roles in their life. And yet, it particularly, as you know, I'm Greek, so Mediterranean men are not afraid to walk arm in arm down the road or hug each other. And so it was a sort of tribute to the idea of masculinity, that you can show tenderness and you can show kindness in a way that's really beautiful. So it was sort of playing on this idea of these two tough guys, but actually they're really sweet with each other and they really do care about each other. So it was a celebration of humanity in many ways.
Yeah, it was. We saw these things. You make it with the glances, and now we saw it with the hands too. How the hands can show what a man believes or thinking. It's a play. It's your play with the hands. When did you realize that? What was about it that you made?
I learned that on the Isle of Paros, on the island of Paros, because I grew up there, and I used to sit there's a little village where my family are from called Lefkes in the mountains, and we had a home there. So I spent a huge part of my life there, and my family have as well. So I used to sit just outside the Cafe Neon and in the Cafe Neon when I was much younger, before I really picked up a camera, and I used to draw. My father was an artist, so I used to copy my father. And after a while, I had a little sketchbook, and I would draw people in the Cafe Neon, or I would draw an old lady as she's walking by with a shopping bag, and I would ask her to stop and sit for me for 5 minutes and draw her. There was a lovely old man called Nikolaki who was crazy, and he was very old, and he used to sing in the choir in 1910, 1915. when he was a little boy. And over the years, he'd gone kind of a little crazy, but he still lived in the village, which is beautiful. They didn't put him in an institution. He was harmless. Mm-hmm. And he would, he looked so cool. You know, he was old school, the cap, the little mustache. Yeah. So I used to draw him. And the only way I could keep him still would be to get him to sing songs from his childhood from the church. So he would go, whoa, 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 whoa. He would sing for ages. All the villagers would say, you know, scase more, the noise. But for me, it was good because he was always sitting for me. And I used to watch him and I used to draw how he moved. And when you're drawing people, you really start to understand how people express themselves. And there are two fundamental ways. There's close-up of someone's face, and you see the details of their humanity in their eyes, the way they move their neck. It's all very expressive. But then there's another type of expression, which is more physical, which is with your body language. And if you're nervous, you will probably fold your arms and sit back because you're protecting yourself. If you're excited, you'll use your hands, as I am, to express an idea. So it's just studying how the human condition expresses itself. Over the years, I picked up the camera eventually, and all those ideas I started to see in Lefkes in the village. I started to see, you start to read people. And after a while, I mean, I've photographed thousands of people now over the years. I'm fluent in human expression and I can read people really, really well. And, you know, now if I'm working with President Trump or Putin or anyone or a Hollywood star like George Clooney or whatever it is, it's still the same. They're highly skilled at covering up their feelings, these people. Mm-hmm. But because of the years of study that I've done, I can still read them, and I still understand that there's something going on inside. It's not my position to judge. Yeah. It's my position to capture and to document and to stimulate a respectful debate with that document. So it's never for me to say this is a good person or a bad person. It's for me to say these people are here, they're important, I think they're important, and I believe they're shaping our time. And instead of all of us making judgments, we should be more curious and discuss the times we're living in. It goes back to Platon, you know, it's ancient Greek philosophy. What is right? What is wrong? What is fair? What is not fair? What is moral? And what is amoral? And there are many answers to this. It's not always a simple straight line between right and wrong. Sometimes the line is very difficult to tell. Sometimes it's all wrong and there is no good choice. So I find these questions really interesting. And through studying people, I can provoke these conversations.
Γεννημένος το 1968, ο Πλάτων μεγάλωσε σε ένα καλλιτεχνικό περιβάλλον, αφού ο πατέρας του ήταν αρχιτέκτονας και η μητέρα του ιστορικός τέχνης. Το σχέδιο μπήκε στη ζωή του από πολύ μικρή ηλικία, όταν και ξεκίνησε η καλλιτεχνική του αναζήτηση. Οι δουλειές του πατέρα του έφεραν τη μετακόμιση στο Λονδίνο, αλλά ήταν τα καλοκαίρια του στην Πάρο, τα οποία διαμόρφωσαν το προσωπικό του στυλ. Σπούδασε graphic design στο St. Martin's School of Art, όπου και ήρθε για πρώτη φορά σε επαφή με τον κόσμο της φωτογραφίας. Ακολούθησαν οι μεταπτυχιακές σπουδές στις καλές τέχνες, στο Royal College of Art, και η απόφαση να περάσει τον Ατλαντικό για να ακολουθήσει το αμερικάνικο όνειρό του. Ξεκίνησε να δουλεύει ως φωτογράφος για το George Magazine του John Kennedy Jr., ενώ το πορτφόλιό του γέμιζε με φωτογραφίσεις για κορυφαίες φίρμες, όπως μεταξύ άλλων η Levi's, η IBM, η Ray-Ban. Σταδιακά, οι φωτογραφίες του κοσμούν τα εξώφυλλα περιοδικών όπως το Time και το Esquire, φωτογραφίζοντας αστέρες του Hollywood, της μουσικής και της πολιτικής. Τότε έρχεται και μια γνωριμία που θα καθορίσει το στυλ του, αυτή με τον συμπατριώτη του, George Lois. Ο Lois, ένα από τα πιο εκεντρικά μυαλά στον τομέα της διαφήμισης παγκοσμίως, τον βοηθά να διαμορφώσει το προσωπικό του στυλ, αλλά και να οικοδομήσει μια καλλιτεχνική οντότητα που υπερβαίνει τα συνηθισμένα κλισέ χαρακτηριστικά.
You often mention George Lois in your interviews.
Yeah.
In what ways did he shape you, not only as an artist, but as a human being navigating the world through images?
Well, George was my teacher and one of my best friends in my life, and was also a mentor. I always think it's really important, like for your readers, this is something that's been really valuable to me, to understand the importance of finding a mentor in life who's probably towards the end of their life or their career, who have so much wisdom. And, you know, young people, we're always in a rush to achieve.
Yeah.
And we forget that actually people have had careers and whole lives of wins and losses before us. And they know a lot of important things that we need to know. And if we don't look back at history and learn from the past, how can we move forward in a productive way? So for me, George, partly because he was Greek, partly because he understood the power of communication and the power of really big ideas. He was also fearless, you know, so brave, and he hated mediocrity. He hated it. So to have George as my sort of champion, always encouraging me to be courageous, to push boundaries, he taught me to be a cultural provocateur. That's his title. And he sort of, as he was my teacher, he really believed that my role beyond photography is to provoke cultural conversations. And to do that, you need to poke, you need to provocative. He had a saying. I actually have this here. This is really cool. It's on my desk, so it proves. This is his St. George slaying the dragon. He used to wear this around his neck, and when he died, his son gave it to me. So it's very close to me, and
Amazing.
It's very interesting because it's St. George. It's like George Lois, but he thought, well, St. George is, you know, slaying the dragon. Okay, so he wrote this phrase. I still have it on my desk. I'm going to read it to you. He says, only with absolute fearlessness can we slay the dragons of mediocrity that invade our gardens. So Amazing. It goes back to this idea of, I call him Saint George because to me he was a saint. His job was to slay the dragon of mediocrity. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons I learned in my life.
If you had to leave behind a single photograph as your legacy, which should it be and why?
I took a picture on Paros many years ago of a young girl with flowers in her hair. I call her Flower Girl. And she must have been about 12, 13. And I don't know what happened, but I caught something in her face, in her look. There's a look of honesty, innocence, of a young girl looking ahead to her life, thinking what might happen in her journey. But I also caught, it's Hellenic. There's something about the structure of her face that is ancient. It's timeless. And because she's wearing flowers and she's wearing lace, I think it was a festival, it was a panayiri or something. It looks like it looks timeless. It looks like I could have taken the picture 300 years ago.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And I still think of, even though I've photographed all these famous, powerful people, this picture of this young girl, innocent, looking at the world with such an open heart, I find devastatingly beautiful, because we've all become so guarded and so distracted. That raw openness of humanity is really hard to find now. And I think young people, especially teenagers, have been robbed of this sort of openness and peace and moment of reflection. Everyone is distracted by all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think I caught something magical. And next year, this is really important, I'm publishing my next book, which will be all my pictures on Paros.
Really?
Yes, so it's 40 years work from 1986 to 2026.
From your boyhood?
All from Paros.
All from Paros?
Yes, and I've also got an exhibition to go with it at the Benaki Museum in Athens. So next year will be Platon is coming home to Greece. Yeah. And the girl the picture I'm describing to you will be the cover of the book.
Oh, amazing. Amazing.
So it's just evidence that I really believe in it, you know.
Ο Πλάτων θα μπορούσε να απολαμβάνει τους καρπούς της δουλειάς του στο στούντιό του στη Νέα Υόρκη, από όπου περνάνε μερικοί από τους πιο ισχυρούς ανθρώπους του πλανήτη. Αυτό θα μπορούσε να συναρπάσει ένα τεράστιο ποσοστό ανθρώπων, όχι όμως και τον ίδιο. Ο Πλάτων βρήκε την αριστοτέλεια ισορροπία του, ιδρύοντας τον μη κερδοσκοπικό οργανισμό People's Portfolio. Έχει ταξιδέψει χιλιάδες χιλιόμετρα σε αφιλόξενες γειτονιές και επικίνδυνες πλατείες για να φωτογραφίσει το άλλο πρόσωπο της δύναμης, εκείνους που την υφίστανται. Από θύματα και εξόριστους της Χούντας στη Μιανμάρ μέχρι τους εξεγερμένους στην πλατεία Ταχρήρ του Καΐρου και γυναίκες θύματα σεξουαλικής εκμετάλλευσης στο Κονγκό, ο Πλάτων προσπαθεί να αναδείξει τα πρόσωπα και τις ιστορίες των καταπιεσμένων αυτής της γης σε μια εξεζητημένη άσκηση ψυχολογικής ισορροπίας. Ποιοι είναι άραγε οι δυνατοί και ποιοι οι αδύναμοι?
Your human rights work is on the other hand of your career. What's the most difficult truth a subject has ever shared with you just before the shooting?
Well, I mean, you know, human rights issues are so important in our society. And to be honest, one of the privileges I've had is that people have trusted me with their story, who have been robbed of all power. I know I'm known for photographing power, but the truth is that I really am drawn to the people who have been robbed of power. And when someone who has been hurt so badly by life, when they still trust me with their story and share their feelings with me and their humanity and their image, you know, as a portrait photographer, that's the biggest reward I could ever have in life. And it's nice when I get given an award or, you know, in some competition or, you know, some ceremony, but really the most important reward is trust from someone who has lost everything. And when you earn that trust, that I take a picture of someone, the most important thing after that is that I have to carry the responsibility they placed in my hands. And I have to make sure that their story lives on in a way that makes them proud. And I've seen a lot of journalists over the years, they just want to earn someone's trust and then take the story and put it out there at all costs because they get the scoop. But sometimes that does great harm to the person that trusted them. So for me, earning the trust is only the first stage. carrying the responsibility of the trust is much, much harder. And, you know, when I photograph someone in human rights and I make a promise that I will make sure their story lives on in history, that's a promise I must keep. So the picture can't go in my drawer and I close the drawer and that's the end. And even if it's published in a magazine, that's just one time. I make a promise that I'm going to keep those stories alive in society. So it's a recurring promise that I have to keep. And I do that with great pride and humility, that I get to, every time I tell someone's story, I know that they'll be excited and proud because they're still alive, they're still being heard. And a lot of one of the hardest things, there's so much noise today and everyone is shouting and there's so much attention on social media and activity that the many important voices are disappearing because it's hard to hear them. And my job is to help them cut through the noise and amplify their voices so that their stories can be heard. That's a great privilege. And I'm very proud of that work.
Has your life even been in danger during these trips?
Yes, it has. We've done, I mean, I was in the Egyptian Revolution. That was pretty rough. We were in Tahrir Square when things were going off, and that was very nerve-wracking. We were also, in so many of my trips, we're all nervous of either being kidnapped or being arrested by regimes. There's another problem, that you get arrested. So we always had to notify the State Department in the USA that we're going somewhere dangerous and that they should be notified. And if we run into problems, they will know that we are there and they will help negotiate our release. Fortunately, we've never really, I've been really lucky. And we've had a few near misses. I mean, in Burma, I smuggled myself into the country to photograph Aung San Suu Kyi the day she was released many years ago. She's back in jail now, as you know, but this is the day she was released from the by the military junta. They gave us strict rules not to speak to the press. So I had to go in disguise, and I smuggled myself into the country, and I met her in her headquarters, and I pretended I'm just a tourist, and I hid all the camera equipment with my assistant in a backpack. But the secret police spotted us, and we had a car chase.
Really?
We were in a car chase. I can't remember how many hours it was, but it was like a James Bond movie. It was a nightmare. And we were chased for hours. We had to change cars. And I just made it out the country before they closed the airport because they knew I was there. And I had photographed the de facto leader who had been banished from power. So the last thing they wanted was her becoming a global icon again. Yeah. But I did it, and it was the cover of Time magazine. So that was scary. Another time, I mean, one of the scariest times was in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I was there photographing survivors of sexual violence. And the dangerous bit was I wanted to go to the mining region to photograph the mines, which that's where you get conflict minerals from that fuel so many of our devices. And that's actually what's powering the epidemic of rape as a weapon of war in the Congo. So it's all connected to our technology because it's very rich in minerals in the Congo. And so just photographing the survivors of sexual violence was one part of the story. That was the human part of the story. But it's also important to understand what's driving this horrendous epidemic. So we went deep into rebel territory, into the mountains, to find a mine and to photograph miners digging coltan out of the earth. And going into rebel territory was really dangerous, because a month before we went, a group of aid workers were all killed. They were all decapitated and their bodies were burnt in a car. And that was a month before I was there. So we were advised not to go. But we went. I spoke to the chief of police and asked him to give me we had bodyguards. I also asked extra police escorts. But there was one point where the escorts refused to go deep into the mining territory. So we were kind of on our own. And I'm always worried about my team. I'm looking for the security of my team. So we've taken chances, but we've always been lucky. Thank God. And we came back and I was able to tell the story. But the thing is that whatever I've been through is nothing compared with the people I photographed. So that doesn't spook me. As long as my team is safe, then I'm happy. But the main thing is that, when you're photographing people who have been through these horrendous experiences, it doesn't matter what I'm feeling. I'm okay. If I compare my life with theirs. So it's a great leveler to remind myself that, whenever I'm feeling down, I always think of all these amazing people I've met and photographed who have gone through much worse than I'll ever go through.
I wanted to ask about that. How do you maintain hope when you're constantly confronted with the darker side of humanity?
Well, I'm confronted with what the darkness can do, which is terrifying. But at the same time, I'm also confronted with resilience, with kindness, with hope, with courage. Like all those human rights defenders that sat for me and human rights victims, they show such courage and such strength. So you can look at this in two ways. It's the same story. You can see the victim, which obviously I am looking at a victim of human rights abuses. But then you can also see, well, hold on a minute. There's another story here. It's a story of survival. It's a story of resilience. It's a story of compassion. It's a story of courage. And it's a story of overcoming adversity. And I find that very inspiring as a story. Yeah. And so I choose to focus on the hero rather than the victim. It's the same person, by the way, and they are a victim. But I know that a hero story will capture the hearts and minds of the public more than guilt. Guilt doesn't work. Inspiration really works. Hope really works. Compassion really works. So those are the things, those are the parts of the story I'm really drawn to. And when we see someone showing kindness and sharing a kind story, and then after that we find out what they've been through, then the kindness means so much more. And it inspires us to be better in our lives. Yeah. Because, when we hear about these stories, it's a reminder how fortunate we are. We think we're having a hard time, but it's a question of comparison. So for me, I have a very good balance of values now because of the amazing people.
Is that the secret of your craft, to see your subject as a hero, not as a victim?
I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, for sure. And even if they're very vulnerable in front of me, I still look at them as heroic because of what they're going through. And I also believe in rebalancing power, because we think of a hero as a movie star.
Yeah.
But a movie star is acting. They didn't actually do those things. They pretended to do those things. But the people I photographed actually did those things, but they're not famous. They're unknown. So my job is to tip the balance back and to say, hold on a minute, what really is a hero in our society? And what is really valuable as a human as a human quality? So I think that's something I've done again and again in my work. I photograph Putin, I photograph Pussy Riot, I photograph Obama, I photograph Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
Photograph governor of North Kivu in the DRC, and then I photograph a young girl who's a survivor of sexual violence. And it's the balance always.
It's a balance. Okay.
Yeah. It's a balance. And you have to go to both extremes.
So it's the ego of power, and the other way is a true hero.
Yeah.
You can say that.
Yeah. And again, it provokes a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What is power? Is power military power, economic power, political power, celebrity power? There is that is a power, for sure. But there's another power: kindness, compassion, strength, hope, courage, curiosity. That's a power. To be curious about what's happening and ask questions,
Mm-hmm.
even about yourself. I think that's another power. I often think, again, we go back to Greece. I was brought up on the Greek myths, as I'm sure you were, mythology. I always was really interested in Icarus because of this idea of his ambition, his drive to be the highest, the best, was his end, because he flew too close to the sun, right? And it destroyed his wings, the heat. Well, power is the sun.
Hybris. Yeah.
Hubris, yes. It's power, fame, money, validation is the sun. And we all are seduced by that. All of us, me included. And I have been dangerously close to it because I've photographed the people in the world who have the most power, the most money, the most fame, whatever it is, the most love and adoration. They have all that. And I've been in the room and I've been really close to it. And I have felt the pull and the seduction of it, even myself.
And your humanitarian work is your memento mori time. Remember, you are mortal.
Yeah, it keeps me aware of how lucky I am and how dangerous that power is. So I never touch it. I always come back and stay out of it. And I've seen so many people who want to be hangers-on in the entourage, who want to just be around it like moths around a flame. I've seen that. And I don't ever want to be one of those people. So I don't belong there. I don't want that power. I don't have a government behind me. I don't have a corporation behind me. I'm free. And that kind of power I don't want. So I leave. And the strange thing is that the fact that I don't want that power and I'm not too seduced by it gives me a strange kind of power.
Yeah.
Which is a different power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which is freedom, curiosity, and the capacity to ask interesting questions all the time.
Exactly. Another angle of this power. Not the usual one.
But maybe because of that, the powerful people want me to photograph them.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Because they want
I'm not one of them.
Yeah, but they want to seduce you too.
They try, and sometimes they do. Sometimes they're not bad people. A lot of movie stars are really lovely people, and I've had amazing times with some people. I have a great time, but I always leave after the shoot. I'm only there for the picture. I am not there. We never have dinner afterwards. It's over.
Because we are free. You don't want to
because
seduce
I'm free. Yeah. I don't want to fly too close to the sun. I like going near it, and I like seeing it and feeling the heat, but then time to get out and cool off.
Ελπίζουμε να κοιμηθείτε λίγο πιο ήσυχοι απόψε, που εκεί έξω υπάρχουν άνθρωποι σαν τον Πλάτων, πιο ήσυχοι και μακάρι πιο εμπνευσμένοι.